So then, once the Constitutional Convention starts in Philadelphia in 1787, there begins to be discussions of some significance about representation. Remember that in previous assemblies, the Articles of Confederation, the Continental Congresses, each colony had the same number of votes. And that is what the small population states wanted, as envisioned in the New Jersey Plan. However, as stipulated in the Virginia Plan, the colonies that had grown so much larger felt, this is democracy. We have more people, we should have more representation. This disagreement eventually was brokered through something called the Great Compromise, introduced by Roger Sherman of Connecticut, so it was also known as the Connecticut Compromise. Through the Great Compromise, we created a bicameral legislature. Bi, meaning two, bicameral, two branches of the legislature. The two branches are the House of Representatives and the Senate. In the House of Representatives, then, a state's representation is determined by population. So a very populous state like California has over 50 representatives in the House today. A smaller population state like Oregon has a handful of representatives. So in the House of Representatives, the large population states got their way. However, in the Senate, in the United States Senate today, the Senate has equal representation, which is what the small states wanted. Today, each state has 2 members of the Senate. California has 2 members of the Senate. Oregon has 2 members of the Senate. Alaska has 2 members of the Senate. So both the small and large population states got their way. Additionally, the House of Representatives serve just 2-year terms. It's considered the people's house. The people can kick every person out of the House of Representatives every 2 years because every 2 years, every member of the House is up for re-election. The Senate, however, in the Senate, senators serve 6-year terms. So the members of the Senate are not so responsible to the fiery voice of the people because the people can be very mad right now, but perhaps when that person is up for re-election 4 or 5 years from now, the people will have forgotten. So to some degree, the Senate is shielded against the political issues of the day, the intensity of some political issues, and that's how the founders had devised it. The other significant compromise was the 3/5 compromise, which, although slavery, slave, enslavement, none of those terms are mentioned in the Constitution does protect and defend the continuation of the institution of slavery. In the 3/5 compromise, the South gets enslaved people to be counted for terms of population for determining representation in the Senate. And the framers use this contrived idea of 5 shall count as 3, which is generally interpreted as each is counted as 3/5 of the person, a horrible, dehumanizing calculus. 5 shall count as 3 for determining population and thus representation in the House. So through the 3/5 compromise, the southern states where enslavement is legal gain more representation in the House. So the question is then, if it's a compromise, what does the North get? The North gets 2 things. The full economic value of enslaved people is taxed, and the Constitution, through the 3/5 compromise, gives Congress the power to end the importation of slaves no earlier than in 1808. And in 1808, indeed, Congress does end the importation of slaves, a step towards abolition, however, a very tiny step, as the importation of slaves ends in 1808, and abolition, the 13th Amendment, following a war fought to end slavery, following the Civil War, does not take place until 1865. Okay, we'll stop there.